All right, let's get some political commentary and legal analysis now on today's ruling on former President Jacob Zuma's attempt at having the lead prosecutor in his corruption case removed from that trial. I'm joined now by Oliver Dickson, who will be giving us his take on this particular matter. Oliver, thank you for your time. So from a legal perspective, let's talk about what came out today. We don't yet have the full reasoned, written out judgment of Judge Pete Koon, but he did us that courtesy I've been talking about of basically neatly summing up what he has found and the basis upon which he reached his findings. As an observer of these matters, are you surprised that this was the outcome?
No, not at all. I think many legal scholars have for a long time just argued just how baseless the special plea by Jacob Zuma is. I think the important question now is whether there's grounds for, at least in the minimum, for a leave to appeal, and whether or not Jacob Zuma's legal team will pursue that. And interestingly for me, does that mean that the April court hearing date where the start of the trial is will be pushed back even further? And if that's the case, then this is by all means a victory for Jacob Zuma and not yet a loss.
And Oliver, among the reasoning, at least what Judge Pete Koon told us, is that there are enough safeguards in our justice system, in our criminal law system, that, you don't have to resort to this to ensure that an accused Section 35 rights are protected. This was not new, was it? Because there was a previous case that gets cited a lot, that Porritt case, that made exactly the same point, that a prosecutor is not the one who decides on admissibility of evidence, etc.
Absolutely. And I mean, if you look at the basis upon which Jacob Zuma and his legal team argued that Billy Downer was conflicted, at least in being able to adequately prosecute this case, was that he made damning remarks about Jacob Zuma and gave lectures on this case, right? That doesn't amount to, at least not in the sense of the trial doesn't amount to.
Don't forget, they say he cried as well.
Absolutely. And I mean, Burley Downer can go the length and breadth of this country and speak on whatever merits of this case he wants to, right? There is, Tulas, as you would know, in South African law, there is no such thing anymore as sub judice, right? And so that should not logically conclude to it meaning he's conflicted. It may well be the case that Billy Downer doesn't like Jacob Zuma on a personal level, right? But our constitution safeguards against that. Our judges aren't blank slate, rasa ipsa, as they would say, and would not just take down, for instance, evidence submitted by the prosecution team and not critically examine that, right? And I mean, it's not as though Jacob Zuma's team would not have the opportunity to argue about the merits and admissibility of that, of whatever evidence is to come forth, right? And so it was baseless to begin with. More than that, it was baseless for Jacob Zuma to argue that there should be an acquittal because of conflict. That took me by surprise, and it's no surprise that the court just dismissed it outrightly.
So, but Oliver, if you think about it, though, do you think that the team, former President Zuma's team, fervently and earnestly believed that this was an avenue that could potentially provide an immediate acquittal for him, that could possibly yield the kind of results they were pleading for, at least formally in court? Or was this always part of a strategy? I'm even afraid to call it a Stalingrad strategy, because, we get slammed that we as the media tend to use this word more than they do.
No, I don't think we should be afraid of using that term, because it's exactly that. It's an excessive delay tactic, right? But we must determine, at least to us, for you and I, what we think success looks like in this legal battle, right? Success does not look like an actual acquittal. I don't think they truly thought there were grounds for an acquittal here, but the strategy has always been shoot higher than what you truly aim for, right? And so you ask for a lot more than what you truly want. And here it's just about getting a judgment or an order to come out so that they can move on to the next step of appealing that as far as they possibly can, should there be grounds for an appeal to begin with, and hopefully delay this all the way to the end. The hope here on the part of Jacob Zuma is that this will that he will appeal this long enough for it to dissipate away out of public consciousness, right? And it may well be the case that they will succeed in that, right? South Africa is a country with a vast number of problems. By the time Jacob Zuma truly is in court, it may well be the case that Cyril Ramaphosa is no longer the president. It may well be the case that there have been major factional shifts within the ANC that will allow for Jacob Zuma to be able to do the things he did during his own presidency. Remember the appointment of Sean Abrams initially, that made sure that this case does not find legs, and then later on with the fervent litigation of Lindiwe Mazibuko as the Democratic Alliance opposition leader of parliament, and then later on Musi Maimane made sure that they were able to keep the story alive. But Jacob Zuma played the chess pieces of what the justice system looked like at the time, at least who the Minister of Justice was, who the National Prosecutor was, who was heading up state security, and all of that sort of things. And it may well be the case that they're racing against the clock here, hoping that the political tectonic plates would shift in a way that would lend him again access to those levers to enact such change, so that this case may well never appear in court to its fullest extent, right? But for now, we have to accept that that April next year is the month which we will see this action happen.
Yeah. Talk a bit more to me, Oliver, about the political aspects that you just touched upon now. Does this strategy, this kick-to-touch strategy, this Stalingrad strategy, in a way then work in favor of, the sensitivities, the political sensitivities of touching this live wire? The live wire was touched around July when former President Jacob Zuma was sent to jail, with the result that the ructions that happened within the ANC happened, as well as the spillover to all of society. For as long as this is happening, basically the live wire of putting Jacob Zuma in the dock and trying him on corruption charges is not touched, and basically we live to, to see another day, at least politically, until something, like the tectonic shifts that you're talking about politically perhaps happens at some point. But you're not the administration during whose tenure that live wire is actually touched.
Look, firstly, we need to examine as a prerequisite to that what the narrative will be, and whether that narrative will be able to exert any sort of political pressure. And so what I at least think we'll see in the next coming days, and the next coming hours really, is a narrative that Ramaphosa and his people are relentlessly pursuing Jacob Zuma because they hate him. And you hear things like, what has Zuma done? And they say that this case is baseless. Why has the NPA been delaying this for so long? The delays are not Jacob Zuma's delays. Delays are all the postponements that the NPA during and still is during its toothless phase asked for postponements before the court since the start of this case many years ago. And you'll see the narrative start building on that. But you'll see the narrative take action towards Jacob Zuma's recent imprisonment as well, saying, but this guy went to jail. How is it that they are still pursuing him? He went to jail. He served the time. Justice was served. Why are they still pursuing him? Necessarily and deliberately conflating those two cases and two issues, right? And the reason why that narrative might be able to stick is because the average South African, unfortunately, does not engage the details and the merits and the minutiae of legal reasoning and legal judgments and court cases, right? They go off of the headlines and they go off of the narratives. And Jacob Zuma, his family and his team have been using Twitter very successfully at building those sorts of narrative, and we see that secondary reporting happening on that. And so that's what will happen as a first step before we can even get to the touching of that live wire, right? Because really it is about really just racing against the clock here. It's December in about 8 weeks or so, right? The ANC promised us that they would go to what do you call it, a national Congress, right? The NGC, and when they get to the General Congress, we will then get a sort of temperature test of what the factional leanings in the party are, and that might give them an idea about how much longer they can still delay, or whether or not to just pursue this trial and to play to the public gallery. At this stage, Thulasizwe, it is really just a 50-50 chance here.
Yeah.
Jacob Zuma is an old man. He'll also play into that narrative and use that as what. So if we rewind back, for instance, to what Dalimpofu argued in the state capture case against Jacob Zuma, right, was that the court needs to take into consideration that this is an old man with ailing health, and therefore should not be pursued as relentlessly as this, and should not even be put in jail. So we'll see those arguments once again come back, that this is a man who is old, who's not well health-wise, and needs medical attention. And so those sorts of things might also once again come to the fore, to be able to delay this as much as possible till they have the certainty that they're able to weaken whatever case the prosecution might have outside of the court by using the political levers to do so.
All right. Oliver Dickson, thank you so much for your time. Always a pleasure chatting to you and getting your insights here on All Angles.